So this story is actually based in Malaysia, where I grew up. So back when I was in my late teens, my father bought me my first car. It was a second-hand car, and a rather battered up one too. But hey, it's a car and it moves, right? So, did I mention that it was a sports car?
No.
Yeah, it was a Triumph Herald convertible, and the top can be put down when we drove it. So I guess, this cool factor more than made up for its appearance lah. So this day in the 70s, I was driving my sports car with the top down along Ipoh Road, all the way to Selayang to visit my first auntie. So with me in the front bucket seat was my grandmother, 80 years old, and my little brother, Long. He was 7 years old then. And right behind me, yakking 19 to a dozen, were my teenage sisters, Fun, Alex, and Max. It was a cool, cloudy day, and so we were all so happy to be out and about, right? And of course, at that time, we didn't have a car radio, but that didn't stop us from singing and bursting out into song every now and then. So just as I was heading up to the 5th mile in the Ipoh Road, I saw in the distance a police car parked at the roadside. Uh-oh, my sister said immediately, and we all suddenly felt some agitation because we knew that when there is a police car, there is trouble. Immediately, I put my hand in my pocket, feeling for the $10 note that was folded and tucked in the pocket there. I didn't want to lose my allowance. Anyway, as I drove up to the police car, a policeman stepped out from behind the car and then he waved me to the side. So I pulled to the side of the road, stopped the car, and turned off the engine. Then I told my siblings, "You just leave this to me." They all nodded nervously, knowing better than to argue. A stocky policeman in dark glasses waddled over to the car. He came to the driver's side, and he stood there, leant against it, and put his hand on the windscreen and tapped on the windscreen. Now imagine, if you would, right, this battered sports car with 4 young girls inside and a little boy in a t-shirt and flip-flops, right, and a grandmother in black pants and a samfu top, complete with handmade frog buttons, sitting there looking up. What would you think? Well, I didn't know what the policeman was thinking, but he stood there and surveyed us. And after a while he said, "Pergi mana?" "Where are you going?" "Oh, pergi rumah saudara lah." "Going to the relative's house." He said. And then he turned from me and looked at my little brother and my grandmother. Then he turned back to me and he said, "Di depan kereta ni tak boleh duduk 3 orang tahu." "In front of this car you can't sit 3 people, you know." "Oh, maaf Encik." I said, sorry sir." Then I turned to my brother and I indicated to him to get to the back of the car. And so Long nimbly climbed over the gear stick and squeezed between my 2 sisters. Then I turned to the policeman and smiled very innocently. "Sudah Encik, dia sudah pindah ke belakang." "Finished, sir, he's moved to the back." "Boleh jalan?" I said. He looked at me and he goes, Then he said, Tunggu. We waited, and he waddled over to where his compatriots were, dealing with other unfortunate drivers who were also stopped. What should we do? My sisters whispered, and leant across the car. I said, "We just wait." So we nervously sat there, fingers crossed, hoping for the best. And after what seemed to be a very long time, the policeman waddled back to us. And this time he stood in front of the car, and he put his hand on the bonnet and he tapped on it, looking at us through his dark glasses still. We all just kept quiet, and my grandmother wisely just looked ahead and not said a word. After a while, he said to us, "Di depan kereta ni tak boleh duduk 3 orang tahu." Same thing, you can't sit 3 people in front, "Oh, maaf Encik, tapi dia sudah pindah ke belakang." Sorry sir, but he's moved to the back." I said, he said. And then he moved and he planted himself there, looking, pondering, staring, Well, we all just looked ahead and pretended that we didn't know what traffic policemen expected of us, just acting innocent, right? And after what seemed to be such a long while, he finally kind of stirred and straightened himself up and then said in a rather resigned voice, "Ay, jalan lah. Go. Oh, terima kasih. My siblings waved their thanks and smiled, right? I turned on the engine and pulled the car out to the road and drove off with studied nonchalance. Don't say a word, I said as I drove off, and my sisters all kept quiet. And as soon as we were 5 or 10 minutes down the road, they erupted into loud whoops of laughter and joy. And relief, of course, right? Woohoo! That stupid fella, he wanted money, he wanted coffee money, we were so clever, yay! And we were going, yahoo, yahoo. And out of the corner of my eye, I saw my grandmother raising her right thumb, and she said with a big smile, oh yeah! Good job. And so we laughed and erupted into loud voices, the wind blowing, the voice down the road. And we were so happy and so relieved because in those days, it was very rare that you can get away from the hands of the traffic police without having to give anything in return, right? So there we were, right? Wind blowing through our hair, my foot on the accelerator. I drove my battered sports car up Ipoh Road, right? Happy and laughing. And so relieved that, so triumphant that we didn't have to lose our money. And at the same time, I put my hand in my pocket again, feeling for the $10 note and saying, woohoo! I have my allowance to spend still.